LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the May 8th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thank you for joining me. I picked out 30 of the weekend's best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really informative, educational, media criticism, and political analysis show for you all tonight. As usual, my clips come mostly from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the Big Five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. You can see the 4 main topics I'm covering listed down in the video description, and if you're watching the recorded version of the show, you should see time indexes down there so you can skip to the topics that most interest you. I've also put a link down there to a PDF of this clip list that I use. It shows the 30 clips, my kind of cryptic notes that you may not understand, but you should at least be able to see what the topic is, the network, and basically who's talking to who. So that's in this list of clips. The 4 topics I'll be covering are basically the end of the 2016 presidential race. Donald Trump has won, which is very unexpected from the point of view of those, if you've been watching the Sunday clip roundups for the last year, back since June of 2015 when Donald Trump announced he was very, I thought it was unlikely that he would get the nomination. Most of the pundits thought it was unlikely. There are a few exceptions that I'll get into a little later in the show, but that's a big deal, and there are actually about 18 clips on that big news. Then I have 6 clips. In those 18 clips, there are 9 clips of Donald Trump himself, who is the only Republican doing interviews because he's the big winner. Then I have 6 clips of Hillary Clinton. That's really the only coverage. No one even really talked about Bernie Sanders winning Indiana over Hillary Clinton, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to that topic. I also will be covering the Libertarian Party slightly because Gary Johnson, the leading contender to be the nominee of the Libertarian Party, was interviewed on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and I'll have a couple clips from the governor of North Carolina, Pat McCrory, spreading misinformation about the so-called bathroom bill for whether transgender people can use the bathroom that fits their gender identity. That will be all the way at the end of the broadcast. But like I said, I want to start off with the end of the 2016 Republican race. As usual, I like to start off with some political comedy. I actually have 4 political comedy clips I'm going to start off with. The first one was a funny clip from last night's Saturday Night Live. I've been complaining that Saturday Night Live hasn't been that funny, and after this I'm going to show a clip that kind of proves my point about Saturday Night Live not really being that funny. But the cold open, where they had Dana Carvey come back and reprise his role as the church lady, I thought was funny. In the part they did with Ted Cruz, which I'm not going to show, and the part they did with Donald Trump, I'm going to show the very beginning of that, and I will talk about it a little more after you watch that clip over here.
Our final guest today is the presumptive Republican nominee. Please welcome the Tangerine Tornado, Donald J. Trump. Terrific. All right. Hi, Donnie. Have a seat. Look at you.
Hey, church lady. It's great to be here.
Yes.
Your place looks tremendous. Believe me, this is one classy fun house.
Actually, this is what we call a church. Something tells me that you're not a big churchgoer.
Oh, I'm a big church guy. I'm there all the time. Sometimes I go, even when it's not church day.
Wow, what a well-put statement. Does Donnie ever take a gander at the Holy Scripture?
Honestly, I love all the books in the Bible. I do. They're all terrific. Corinthians part 2. Book of Revelations. 2 Genesis, 2 Furious. Which says, and I quote, love thy neighbor as thyself, and like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And always keep the Sabbath huge. That's Moses. Oh, and the part where Jon Snow comes back to life. That's great Bible.
Well, isn't that special? Johnny, there are those who say you're not qualified, and that's not true. You know, I remember a Celebrity Apprentice episode where Gary Busey didn't sell enough pancakes, and you just said, you're fired. And I thought, right then and there, give this man the nuclear codes.
A lot of people are saying that.
Apparently, a lot of people are saying that. And one thing I forgot to mention, is down in the video description, I put a link to that entire cold open with the church lady and Dana Carvey and Daryl Hammond as Donald Trump, and then also the Ted Cruz part. It's all available on YouTube for free. They've uploaded that to their to the Saturday Night Live YouTube channel, and I thought that was pretty funny. That that part of the cold open. This next clip I'm going to show is about 2 minutes and 45 seconds from the beginning of Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, where they confronted the same question I'll show Bill Maher confront in just a minute, which is, so it happened, Donald Trump. You know, basically that's how I started the show. And then they do a whole series of jokes. I think the one at the end from Colin Jost is pretty funny, but I think almost all of these jokes are kind of flat, as I will discuss. And you can let me know what you think down in the comment section, but as you're watching it, and then I will discuss it after we watch it together over here.
Well, it happened. Donald Trump has secured the Republican nomination, and no matter how many times I say that, it still sounds less like a headline and more like the ominous beginning of a Star Wars movie. And even though this has been coming for months, everyone still seems shocked. Even Trump said he was surprised. I bet if you told Trump a year ago that he'd be the Republican nominee, he would have said, but I'm a Democrat. And remember, Donald Trump promised that once he got the nomination, he was going to be, quote, so presidential. Which is why the first thing he did on Cinco de Mayo was tweet out a photo of himself eating a taco bowl with a caption saying, I love Hispanics. First of all, a taco bowl sounds like what Trump would call a group of Mexicans in a hot tub. Also, dude, clean your office. I mean, look at you. You're eating off a stack of newspapers like the world's richest hamster. And you're giving the type of weird thumbs up you usually see from a brain-damaged boxer.
Well, wait, let's look around that office. He's got loose blueprints just lying around like he's Howard Hughes. He's got framed photos, all of himself stacked 3 deep, and he has not one but 2 bobbleheads of Donald Trump flanking what I can only assume is a tiny Oscar trophy he made for himself for his work in Home Alone 2. I still can't believe the Republicans let Donald Trump win the nomination fair and square. I mean, if there was ever a time to cheat, this would be it. I didn't even know you guys counted votes. All this time, I thought the Republican nominee was selected by a secret society of rich old white dudes playing butt-naked leapfrog in a sacred temple. And you actually count votes? I feel so lied to. I mean, where is that spooky right-wing Illuminati when you need them, really? You know, I'm starting to think you guys aren't lizard people at all.
And here's my prediction, okay? I really think now that Trump has the nomination, he's gonna become president, okay? Because people don't like to admit it in public, but they secretly really like Trump. Everywhere I go, I'm like, you guys like Trump? And they're like, boo, no. And then I'm like, are you gonna vote for him? And they're like, probably. And yes, a lot of people hate Trump, but don't forget, a lot of people hate Hillary, too. No one's really happy with either of these choices. It's like if you're in the mood for soup, so you go to the diner to get some soup. But the only 2 options they have left are pumpkin corn chowder or Hillary Clinton. And you're like, on second thought, I'm not that hungry.
So, like I said, I thought the soup joke at the end there was kind of funny. I actually thought the Star Wars joke at the beginning about the orange menace with the scroll, you know, how Donald Trump has won the nomination sounds like the beginning, ominous beginning of a Star Wars movie. I thought that was kind of funny. Almost nothing in between. The entire Michael Che thing. I'm a big fan of Michael Che, actually, but and I don't know how many of those jokes he actually wrote or whether they tell the jokes that they wrote or what writers wrote them. But I think since Tina Fey and Seth Meyers left as head writers, that their writing has really gone downhill. And the one joke in the Michael Che said, I just because I've spent so much time online on the internet and on YouTube, I like the reference to the Illuminati and the reptilians. I found that a little bit humorous, but other than that, I thought most of that was pretty flat, and you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I'm going to show a much shorter set of jokes from Bill Maher on the same subject that I thought hit a little bit more funny for me, and I will explain why after you watch that 45-second clip from Bill Maher's monologue last Friday, where he basically dealt with the same "so it's Trump" and the resulting jokes here.
But you know, they said it couldn't happen. They said it wouldn't happen. It happened. Yeah. Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee for president. And you know, I have taken a lot of crap over the years for saying this is a stupid country. I should have trademarked it. Everybody keeps saying, it's a reality show. Yeah, Fear Factor. I feel like I know how Dracula got to run Transylvania. They had primaries, there was debates, and then the other vampires just couldn't stand Ted Cruz. I mean, yeah, that's what happened.
So, yeah, I thought that set of jokes about, so it's Donald Trump was more funny. Also, Bill Maher played into a comment he's made over and over again over the years that I've been a fan of his about how it's a stupid country, which in some sense I agree with, but in another sense I think is isn't that respectful of people's different kinds of intelligence or whatever. But I did think those jokes were more funny. And oh, by the way, I was reading your comments along the way. I like to. This is a comment, I guess, that Ben Duncan posted during the SNL set of jokes. And it says, that's not a joke he actually posted. I think he's referring to Donald Trump's taco bowl. And that may be a reason why it's so hard to make jokes about Donald Trump that are funny, because the actual things he does are kind of more jokes than the punchlines. I think the posting the taco bowl picture on Cinco de Mayo and saying, I love Hispanics, or I think it was I love Hispanics. Anyway, that was kind of ridiculous. And before I get to the news clips on the Republican side, I want to play one more clip from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, showing even though Bill Maher does this political comedy, sometimes he does have people on who give a different perspective you don't get in the regular news. And, well, I guess Ann Coulter, who I'm going to refer to in that category, she does show up on Fox News every now and then, and but she did say something that sounded like a joke back like a week after Donald Trump announced his candidacy that turned out not to be a joke. So I guess you have to give Ann Coulter credit for this one thing that Bill Maher gave her credit for, and then there's a little resulting conversation that I will discuss after you watch that clip here.
Start with a clip. This is from our overtime. You know, we do overtime, which is something we do for the internet after the show. If people want to, like, I don't know why they do this, turn off HBO and turn on your computer. But this is from the last time you were on the show. This is when there were many, many, many Republican presidential candidates still in the race. And here's the question that someone asked, and I related to you, and here's what happened. Okay, here we are. And which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones right now, Donald Trump.
Well, go ahead. You gloat, eat crow. You
want to get your stock tips from me now?
Yeah,
No one ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of the American people.
Well, a lot of people apparently have. Because a lot of people said he wouldn't even win a primary. So last week, Rob Reiner, who I love, was here, and we ended the show by saying, I think Hillary's going to win in a landslide. And I said, don't say that. So I'm giving you credit for that, and I also want to use you to scare liberals. But I ask you right now, can Trump win the general election?
It's possible. I don't
Hear
know.
that?
Wait, you sound a lot less certain. Yeah.
No, I mean, what I would say about Trump is, and that's why I'm so glad it's Trump, I think he will do better than any other Republican could have as the results of this primary election show. He does represent not only the Republican Party, but large segments of the Democratic Party that has been being ignored. We have been asking for the wall. We have been asking for a decrease in immigration. And time after time, the people rise up, shut down amnesty, throw out Dave Brat beats Eric Cantor, and they can't learn. Well, I think we know now the wall is popular.
First, we
but
have a timeout on immigration.
Okay, that's all the Ann Coulter I can stand, but she was right about Donald Trump. There were a few people who saw it coming. Maybe they were making jokes, but there were several people who had... there are several clips going around of different pundits and political office holders who, unlike most of the pundits and establishment and conventional wisdom, actually saw back in June that Donald Trump really had a chance. I mean, I don't remember exactly what I said. I haven't gone back. I've been making these LiberalViewer predicted videos this last week, a couple of them, and one I will be referring to later when I get to the LGBT topic about Governor Pat McCrory of North Carolina and the bathroom bill for transgender use, because that's something I predicted a few weeks ago. But I certainly can't say I predicted Donald Trump, and if I go back, I actually was thinking I might make a video that... titled LiberalViewer predicted Donald Trump would lose Republican nomination, and find some clips. I'm not sure if I actually went that far, but I'm sure that's what I was thinking was the most likely outcome. So I guess I have to give Ann Coulter credit for that. And now I want to move on to the real actual news clips before I get to the 9 clips of Donald Trump being interviewed on a couple different shows this morning. I want to show some of the introductory news clips, and then there's one Sarah Palin clip in here. First with Jake Tapper over on State of the Union. I like to show how he terms the State of the Union, because I think it's kind of funny every week that this week the State of the Union is reeling. And then he shows a clip of the news he made earlier in the week of the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, not saying he's willing to endorse Donald Trump. And I wanted to show this because it actually shows a longer clip of that than you'll see in the later news reports. And it's something Donald Trump was asked about in both interviews. I have one answer on that about his upcoming interview with Paul Ryan, trying to unite the Republican Party. And that's the subject of this first clip from Jake Tapper on the State of the Union on CNN this morning. Over here.
Tapper in Washington, D.C., where the state of our union is reeling. A wild week in American politics as Donald Trump becomes the presumptive Republican nominee following the surprise dropout of his rival Ted Cruz. And then this shocker, which played out live right here on CNN. So, Mr. Speaker, you have said throughout this process that you will support the Republican presidential nominee. Now you have a presumptive nominee, Donald Trump. Will you support him?
Well, to be perfectly candid with you, Jake, I'm just not ready to do that at this point. I'm not there right now. And I hope to, though, and I want to. But I think what is required is that we unify this party. And I think the bulk of the burden on unifying the party will have to come from our presumptive nominee.
But what you're saying is a fairly dramatic announcement that the Speaker of the House cannot, as of now, support his party's nominee for president. Is there something specific that he has done or said that has brought you to this moment?
Well, like I said, I hope to support our nominee. I hope to support his candidacy fully, and I want to do that. But right now, just I got to tell you, Jake, just being candid with you, at this point, I'm just not there right now.
That interview set off a firestorm within the GOP. The Republican Party is now divided, with Mitt Romney, Jeb Bush, Lindsey Graham saying they will not vote for Donald Trump, and both Presidents Bush saying you will not see them at the Republican convention this summer. But other Republican stalwarts, including Bob Dole and Vice President Dick Cheney, they're pledging to stand behind the presumptive nominee.
So that was Jake Tapper's fairly brief report on the split in the Republican Party. I wanted to show it to compare it to the reports I'm going to show from NBC and ABC in just a couple of minutes. But the clip that comes after that is the one also from CNN State of the Union. It's actually the next clip chronologically that he was just shifting to about one of the earliest supporters of Donald Trump, of course, is Sarah Palin. And Sarah Palin talked about the kind of price that Paul Ryan might pay because he is refusing to endorse Donald Trump, or at least not yet. That's something Donald Trump said earlier, that if Paul Ryan doesn't end up endorsing him, that he'll pay a price. But he wasn't really making any threats against Paul Ryan today. But you can see Sarah Palin did, and she even made news saying that, to the extent that she represents the crazy wing of the Republican Party, or the Tea Party wing. She did make some key endorsements years ago. I don't know how relevant she is now, but here she is saying she's endorsing the person who's challenging Paul Ryan in the primary, and he's going to be cantered, as Jake Tapper explains over in this clip.
One of the earliest Trump loyalists, former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, who was on the presidential ticket in 2008. She joins us now. Governor Palin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jake.
So, Governor, as you know, Speaker Ryan told me on Thursday that he is not ready to support Donald Trump. Now, one of Trump's spokespeople told CNN that if Ryan does not back Trump, he should not be Speaker of the House. What do you think?
I think Paul Ryan is soon to be cantered as an Eric Cantor. His political career is over, but for a miracle, because he has so disrespected the will of the people. And yeah, as the leader of the GOP, the convention, certainly he is to remain neutral, and for him to already come out and say who he will not support was not a wise decision of his. I think why Paul Ryan is doing this, Jake, is it kind of screws his chances for the 2020 presidential bid that he's gunning for. If the GOP were to win now, that wouldn't bode well for his chances in 2020, and that's what he's shooting for. So a lot of people with their never Trump or not right now Trump mantra going on, they have their different reasons. I think that one is Paul Ryan's reason.
Well, specifically, when you talk about him being Eric Cantored, Eric Cantor was the House Majority Leader who was challenged in the primary by a conservative candidate who got a lot of grassroots support, and that was a big surprise. Paul Ryan is facing a challenge in the Republican primary in Wisconsin. The primary is coming up. It's August 9th. The candidate is, I believe his name is Paul Nehlen. Are you planning to support his challenger?
Well, that's a good question, seeing as I haven't even got to call him and tell him that I'm supporting him. But yes, I will do whatever I can for Paul Nehlen. This man is a hard-working guy, so in touch with the people. Paul Ryan and his ilk, their problem is they have become so disconnected from the people whom they are elected to represent, as evidenced by Paul Ryan's refusal to support the GOP front runner that we just said he's our man. And what Paul Ryan and his ilk, again, their problem is they feel so threatened at this point that their power, their prestige, their purse will be adversely affected by the change that is coming with Trump and with someone like Paul Nehlen, that they're not thinking straight right now.
Well,
and that is as much Sarah Palin, I think, as I can stand. She kind of grates on me in some of the ways Ann Coulter does, I guess. And I noticed someone down in the comment section, I didn't have time to do a screen capture, but someone down in the comment section was asking why is Sarah Palin relevant, and I'm not sure she really is, although she is on as sort of, like I said, the representative of the crazy wing of the Republican Party, or the Tea Party wing. I think she did have more relevance a few years ago, back in, like in 2010, when the Tea Party was growing. She endorsed some candidates where she had some relevance, but I think her relevance is definitely waning, which is why it's kind of ironic that she was saying that Paul Ryan doesn't have any future political career, when it's actually her future political career that seems pretty much in doubt, although I guess she was an early supporter of Donald Trump, so maybe she will get to be like Secretary of Energy or something, who knows. But she kind of said that she was willing to be vice president, but thought that it would hurt the Trump ticket if later in that interview. You can see the whole thing down on the CNN website, CNN State of the Union. I put a link down in the video description. But now actually I want to move on to the ABC report on kind of the same subject I showed the clip before last on the split in the Republican Party. it starts with Joe Biden warning what you heard Bill Maher warning about earlier, that Democrats shouldn't be complacent because, you know, anything could happen with Donald Trump, especially with his ability to pivot. That's something that George Stephanopoulos, I think, mentions in here, maybe not. And then he mentioned something I think is really important to remember about Donald Trump and how historic his win of the nomination is, that he's the first candidate since Eisenhower to be nominated without being elected to political office, and he's not really an Eisenhower. And then he compares him to Reagan and says he's in the same situation as Reagan, but Reagan was actually governor of California, which they don't really mention in the report you can see over here.
Beating the odds, he surprised everybody. I think we all make a mistake if we don't take him seriously.
The vice president there warning fellow Democrats that Trump may pivot.
And begin to do the policy pieces of what would make people think, well, maybe this guy can actually be president.
You have to go all the way back to Dwight Eisenhower to find a candidate with as little political experience. But Eisenhower was America's war hero. Trump, a businessman and TV star. You're fired. Well, in 1976, Ronald Reagan was also dismissed as a B-movie actor, but he almost took the nomination. 4 years later, he was in the same spot Trump is in now, trailing Jimmy Carter in all the polls. Then, as the general election kicked off, Reagan caught a wave of populist anger and rode it all the way to the White House.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear. Very good magazine this week.
But the party that still reveres Ronald Reagan is far from sold on Donald Trump.
I think what is required is that we unify this party. And I think the bulk of the burden on unifying the party will have to come from our presumptive nominee.
I'm going to do what I have to do. I have millions of people that voted for me.
I sat down with Trump at Omaha's airport on Friday.
And I'm going to show some more clips from the ABC interview with Donald Trump. But first I want to show several clips from the NBC Meet the Press interview after I show the NBC Meet the Press news story to compare to that ABC one and the CNN State of the Union one on the split in the Republican Party. Like I said, I thought that that last one, the comparison to Reagan, to Eisenhower was important. I didn't see it made anywhere else as to the historic nature of Donald Trump getting the nomination without having been elected to office, but then they compared him to Reagan without mentioning Reagan was governor of California. Well, here's the 3-minute, fairly extensive report from Chuck Todd over on Meet the Press that he played before his interview with Donald Trump that I will discuss after you watch that clip with me over here.
Instead, he was opposed to raising the minimum wage. Now he says he's open to raising it. During the primaries, Trump put out a plan lowering taxes on everybody, including the wealthy. Now he says he's open to raising taxes for the wealthiest Americans. And during the primaries, Trump insisted over and over again he would self-fund his campaign, and now he says he's building a world-class finance organization aimed at raising money for his campaign. That and so much more has led a long parade of prominent Republicans to say either they can't support Trump or they have to think it over. We'll get to my interview with Donald Trump in just a moment, but one thing is clear. He begins this campaign as the presumptive nominee of a party whose leadership, A, didn't want him, and B, is deeply reluctant to rally around him. In short, is the Republican Party wigging out?
I'm not there right now, and I hope to, though, and I want to. But I think what is required is that we unify this party.
Donald Trump is facing a rejection from Republican Party leaders that is unprecedented in modern politics.
I think Donald Trump's a con man. I'm not going to support somebody I don't believe is a reliable Republican conservative.
Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse says a third-party candidate is the only solution. Quote, "This is America. If both choices stink, we reject them and go bigger." The only two living Republican presidents, both Bushes, are also no's, refusing to endorse Trump and skipping the Republican convention after a campaign of insults to Jeb.
He's low energy, that's for sure.
The 2012 nominee, also a no, is being courted to run as an independent. So far, Mitt Romney is not interested. The 2008 nominee, with a primary in August, is a reluctant yes, but also staying away from Cleveland in July.
If there's Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, I have no doubt that this may be the race of my life.
Even the chair of the convention is sending a signal to donors and voters that it's okay to stay on the bench.
I think the bulk of the burden on unifying the party will have to come from our presumptive nominee.
I didn't get Paul Ryan. I don't know what happened. I don't know. All of a sudden, he wants to be cute, but you know, we'll see.
With a meeting planned in Washington next week, the chill could thaw, and some Trump skeptics are coming around, including Rick Perry, who said this just months ago.
Donald Trump's candidacy is a cancer on conservatism.
But Trump begins the general election as a scarred candidate, trailing by 23 points among women and leading by just 3 points among men.
He doesn't think much of equal pay for women because, of course, he doesn't think much of women, it turns out.
But for Trump, the attacks are going to be personal.
And she was a total enabler. She would go after these women and destroy their lives. I mean, have you ever read what Hillary Clinton did to the women that Bill Clinton had affairs with? And they're going after me with women? Give me a break, folks.
Yesterday.
So that was the third news report. It also emphasized the pivot at the beginning, which you'll see several questions on the pivot from Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, similar to questions that I am not going to duplicate from his interview with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. I thought that was a good summary, the best of the three, really. The Chuck Todd one on NBC was the best summary of the split in the Republican Party. It was the longest. I think it had the best juxtaposition of the different clips. The only thing I'd say, CNN State of the Union had a longer Paul Ryan clip because it came from CNN, a program that Jake Tapper did. What is his? I can't even remember the name of his. The Lead. Yeah, that's right. The CNN's The Lead with Jake Tapper during the week. So they played a better, longer Paul Ryan clip. But other than that, I think the NBC clip was the best. And now I'm going to show you 9 clips of Donald Trump. I think it's 5 from Meet the Press and 4 from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. I'm going to play them all in a row, except before the last clip, I'm going to throw in a 3-minute clip of HBO's Real Time, Bill Maher doing one of his new rules. I won't give away exactly why I'm putting that in there, but it will at least break up the Donald Trump clips between clip 8 and 9. But I want to start off with this first clip of the Meet the Press interview with Donald Trump, where Chuck Todd asks him if he's surprised he wrapped it up so early, and I will discuss Donald Trump's answer after you watch it over here.
Mr. Trump, and I began by asking if he was surprised to have already wrapped up the Republican nomination.
Well, I thought I'd do it. I didn't know I was going to do it this early. I assumed that Hillary would be watching me as opposed to me watching Hillary, so that's good. And it's going to be an interesting thing because Bernie Sanders is not being treated fairly. He's not being treated fairly. You know, it's a rigged system against him also. I'm no Bernie fan, I can tell you that, but it is a rigged system.
Do you believe the system is, the Republican system was pretty rigged too, even though you're winning it?
Yeah. Totally rigged. It was totally rigged, and it was only that I was winning by so much. I was winning in landslides every week, and if I weren't, I wouldn't have been able to do it because it was dictated by the bosses. But you know what? I'm happy with it. It's like a boxer. You have to go and you have to knock out the opponent. We won so many landslide states, especially the last 7 or 8, that you know, there was nothing much they could do about it. But it's not a good system.
You complained about the system a lot.
Wow, Donald Trump is bragging that he was a big winner. That's not something you see on many Donald Trump interviews. No, but the thing that was a little bit surprising was the way he said good things about Bernie Sanders there. I think the obvious analysis is that he's trying to go after disaffected Bernie Sanders voters if he doesn't end up being the Democratic nominee, which seems the most likely outcome. And I want to move on then to the next clip. This is a question that I saw Donald Trump asked both on Meet the Press and over on ABC's This Week. I'm just going to show this one answer, and it relates to that Paul Ryan clip I showed. That was in all 3 of the news reports, the longest version on CNN State of the Union, where Paul Ryan says he's not there yet on endorsing Donald Trump, and he's actually going to be the head of the Republican convention, the chair of the Republican convention, and he's not endorsing Trump yet. And they're having this meeting on Thursday. I think it's on Thursday, and this is a long back and forth where you'll see Chuck Todd tries to get Donald Trump to say something negative about Paul Ryan, and he doesn't do what Sarah Palin did in that earlier clip. He actually kind of keeps his options open with Paul Ryan, I think, as I will discuss after you watch that 3.5-minute clip over here.
the Paul Ryan situation. Frankly, you seem pretty annoyed by this. Are you?
No, it's just the way it is. I don't think it hurts me at all, and I'd like to have his support, but if he doesn't want to support me, that's fine, and we have to go about it. Look, I'm going to get millions and millions of votes more than the Republicans would have gotten. If you look at the numbers, I think right now, or I will be this week or next week, in the history of the Republican Party, nobody has ever gotten so many votes as I have. I've beaten Eisenhower and Nixon and Reagan and everybody. And we have a tremendous group of people that's voting. And remember, I have a lot of states left. And if you look at the percentages I'm winning, I mean, I got 62% in New York, and I got these massive numbers all over, and I have 3 candidates. I was having to beat 3 candidates. You know, nobody ever mentions that you get 62%, but it's not against just one person. It's against, in this case, 3. And
well, obviously,
during the process,
your case to Paul Ryan is, hey, the voters have decided, get on board.
Well, I would say that's true. I mean, to be honest, I like Paul Ryan. I think he's a very good guy. He called me 3 weeks ago, and he was so supportive. It was amazing, and I never thought a thing like this.
So you're stunned.
I got blindsided by this.
You feel blindsided by him?
No, I would say stunned is a little bit, it's politics. I'm never stunned by anything that happens in politics. But I'm not, yeah, I was blindsided a little bit because he spoke to me 3 weeks ago, and it was a very nice call, a very encouraging call. I was doing well. He called me, I think, to congratulate me about New York because I won by massive numbers. I won everything. And then the next week, I won the 5 states in a row by all landslide numbers. And he called me to congratulate me. Couldn't have been nicer. And again, I have a nice relationship with him. Don't know him well. Met him one time, but have a nice relationship with him. And then all of a sudden, he gets on and he does this number. So I'm not exactly sure what he has in mind, but that's okay.
If he can't endorse you, do you think he should be chair of the convention?
I don't want to mention now. I'll see after. I will give you a very solid answer if that happens about 1 minute after that happens, okay? But there's no reason to give it right now, but I'll be very quick with the answer.
It sounds
Let's
like I know
what
it sounds like I know what the answer is, but you don't want to say it yet. You don't want to sound
No,
you're not here. You don't want to issue threats.
Say.
You're not going to issue a public threat.
I don't think that's going to happen. You know, the parties come together. I have tremendous numbers of endorsements. I'm never going to get Romney's endorsement. He choked. He blew the last election. I'm never going to get that. I'm never going to get Bush's election. You know, he thought I was too rough on him. He doesn't say that he spent $10 million on negative ads. But Jeb Bush, I was tough on him, and he was trying to be tough on me, but he's not a very tough guy. But, you know, I was very tough on him. But he spent $10 million or $12 million on negative ads on me, so why shouldn't I be? The fact is, and by the way, Chuck, very important, he signed a pledge. He pledged that he would support the nominee. And so did this lightweight Lindsey Graham. He pledged that he would support the nominee.
You threatened to back away. You threatened to back away from that pledge a lot for various reasons.
No. I didn't back away. In fact, one of the reasons I didn't back away is that I happen to be, despite what a few people think, I happen to be a very honorable guy. I signed a pledge, and that's a binding pledge. You know, I heard it's not binding. Well, it is a binding pledge. I have the best lawyers in the world. They say it's an absolutely binding pledge.
Well, it was definitely binding in South Carolina. It was very binding for South Carolina. That was the only way to get on the ballot.
But remember, Chuck, remember this. Jeb Bush signed a pledge, a binding pledge. Lindsey Graham signed a binding pledge that they would endorse, that they would support and endorse. That's what it says. Now they're breaking. That's an honor, you know, that's a question of honor. They are not honorable people when they do that.
Let me ask you about Mitt Romney.
They're going against a pledge.
And I apologize for those of you who are watching as a live show. I think there were some stream problems there. I may have to upload the recorded version if there are gaps in the archive of the live stream. I've done everything I can to upgrade on my end. I've doubled my internet speed, so I think it has something to do either with high internet usage on Sunday evenings here in the United States, or maybe it has to do with something on YouTube's end, but I apologize for that. It looks like things have gone back to normal for the moment, and I'm going to keep playing the Donald Trump clips. My commentary on that last clip, first I would say that I find it a little bit amusing that Donald Trump in there says that he, you know, never wavered on his pledge, and now the other candidates are being dishonorable on saying they won't support the Republican candidate after they made the pledge. Because if you've been watching the coverage over the last several months, he's gone back and forth on the pledge. He said, you know, only if he was treated fairly, and he like threatened to bolt on the pledge several times. So that was pretty dishonest, and I wonder why Chuck Todd didn't call him on that. And then the next 3 clips I want to show, the last 3 from the Meet the Press interview, are all on flip-flops that Donald Trump seems to be undergoing in his positions, where he's now doing his pivot towards the general election, where he may or may not be moderating his position. And the first one I'm going to show, and these are all questions he was asked by George Stephanopoulos as well, but because I watched Meet the Press before ABC's This Week, I ended up taking the Meet the Press clips. And then, so the first one is on flip-flopping on his tax plan, on whether he's going to lower taxes for the rich or raise taxes on the rich or on businesses. And this goes on for about also 3.5 minutes. Is that right? Or let me make sure. Which clip is this? Yeah. About 3.5 minutes, where Chuck Todd does his best to do some cross-examination, and I'm going to discuss why I think this is happening after you watch that clip with me over here.
There's a few things that some people think are contradictions, so I want to see if I can pin you down here. The issue of taxes. Your tax plan is one where the biggest beneficiaries are the 0.1% when it comes to raw dollars that will be saved among taxes. But then in an interview earlier this week, you seem to say, you know what, my tax plan, it's not set in stone, and maybe I'll raise taxes. Maybe I'll actually raise taxes on the rich. So I guess, which is it? Are you willing to raise taxes on the 0.1%?
No. Let me explain how the world works, okay? I think nobody knows more about taxes than I do, and income than I do. But I'll explain how it all works. I don't come up with it. I come up with the biggest tax cut by far of any candidate, anybody, and I put it in. But that doesn't mean that's what we're going to get. We have to negotiate. The thing I'm going to do is make sure the middle class gets good tax breaks, because they have been absolutely shunned. The other thing, I'm going to fight very hard for business. For the wealthy, I think, frankly, it's going to go up. And you know what? It really should go up.
They should pay. The wealthy need to pay more taxes. What do you define as wealthy, by the way?
Let me explain. Somebody like me. Let me explain something. I'm putting in a plan, Chuck. I have to negotiate now with senators and congressmen and lots of it. The fact that I put in a plan, it really is a floor. That's what it is, whether we like it or not. So I put in my plan. It's quite simple to see. It's a simplification. We lower the number of brackets. We lower the taxes on the middle class, on business, and we lower the taxes on everybody very substantially. But I have no illusions. I don't think that's going to be the final plan, because they are going to come to me, including the Democrats and everybody else. They're going to come to me. They're going to want to negotiate. But that's a floor. That's where we're starting. So is that now? When it comes time to negotiate, I feel less concerned with the rich than I do with the middle class.
So it sounds should we take that?
I feel very concerned.
Should we assume that most of your plans then, we shouldn't take you at your word as sort of that they're floors, what you just described, that, you know what, it's my opening statement, but everything is negotiable.
Excuse me, it's called life, Chuck. It's not my word. Of course, I put in a proposal. You know what they are? They're really proposals. People can say it's a tax plan. It's really a tax proposal, because after I put it in, and I think you know the Senate and Congress, you know as much as anybody, they start working with you and they start fighting, and let's see what happens. But I put in a proposal. Under my proposal, it's the biggest tax cut by far of any candidate, by far. But I'm not under the illusion that that's going to pass. They're going to come to me. They're going to want to raise it for the rich. Frankly, they're going to want to raise it for the rich more than anybody else. But the middle class has to be protected. The rich is probably going to end up paying more, and business might have to pay a little bit more. But we're giving a massive business tax cut. Remember this: we're the highest taxed nation in the world.
Wait a minute. Let me stop you there. You just said businesses might pay a little bit more. You just said business might pay a little bit more, but we're going to get them a massive tax cut. You just said it within 10 words.
No, I didn't say it. Excuse me. I said they might have to pay a little bit more than my proposal, Chuck.
Oh, your proposal. Okay. I just wanted to get that clear.
Than my proposal.
Fair enough.
I'm not talking about more than they're paying now.
Gotcha.
We're the highest taxed nation in the world. Our businesses pay more taxes than any businesses in the world. That's why companies are leaving. So they may have to pay a little bit more than my proposal. Is what I mean. I assume.
Gotcha. Okay. No. I just wanted to clear that up.
Okay, good.
Minimum wage.
Good. I'm glad you cleared it.
Minimum.
And I'm going to get to the minimum wage answer next, but I thought Chuck Todd did a good job there at the end of clarifying what it was that Donald Trump meant when he said they're going to pay a little more and get a big tax cut, because that sounded like a contradiction to me, and I guess it makes sense the way Donald Trump cleared that up, and I guess that shows how sometimes things can sound like contradictions and not actually be contradictions. But I think that whole previous argument where he was talking about how he's a deal maker and he's going to negotiate, and that's why he's talking about how he might not have the same tax cuts in his proposal. Well, I don't really think that's an adequate explanation for why he's changing the priorities in his tax plan after he's won the nomination. I think because if he's such a great deal maker, one of the primary rules in negotiation, I know this from when I used to negotiate as a lawyer, one of the primary rules is you don't negotiate against yourself. You may have a starting position that's like farther away from, much more extreme than where you want to end up, which is what he said there, but you certainly don't want to then start negotiating against yourself. It just makes no sense. But I want to move on to the next clip of Chuck Todd examining one of these flip-flops. This is on the minimum wage, and I will discuss Donald Trump's answer on that question after you watch it over here.
Minimum wage at a debate, you remember what you said. You thought you didn't want to touch it. Now you're open to it. What changed?
Let me just tell you, I've been traveling the country for many months, since June 16th. I'm all over. Today I'm in the state of Washington, where the arena right behind me, you probably hear, is packed with thousands and thousands of people. I'm doing that right after I finish you. I have seen what's going on, and I don't know how people make it on $7.25 an hour. Now, with that being said, I would like to see an increase of some magnitude, but I'd rather leave it to the states. Mm-hmm. Let the states decide, because don't forget, the states have to compete with each other.
Right. You want but should the federal government set a floor, and then you let the states?
No, No, I'd rather have the states go out and do what they have to do. And the states compete with each other, not only other countries, but they compete with each other, Chuck. So I like the idea of let the states decide. But I think people should get more. I think they're out there, they're working. It is a very low number. With what's happened to the economy, with what's happened to the cost, I mean, it's just, I don't know how you live on $7.25 an hour. But I would say let the states decide.
Another contradiction is...
Well, it's at least nice to see a Republican politician willing to say he doesn't understand how people can live on $7.25 an hour. But that answer, if you really believe that, then you would want to set a lower floor for all of the states than $7.25 an hour, and you wouldn't want to, as president, say that you believe in a higher minimum wage, but you're not going to do anything about it at the federal level. And he gave kind of a different answer on ABC that I'm not going to show, but similarly showed that he's willing to pivot, and I think that's the big takeaway. And I talked about this over the last several weeks, that I think that possibly his positions, I mean, he's still going to be kind of a shallow blowhard. That part is, he's not going to be able to pivot into being more presidential on that level. That's what some people talk about in terms of him being more presidential, not being so shooting from the hip or saying such politically incorrect things, some people say. But I think his positions are going to start pivoting to start targeting more the center, more disaffected Democrats, some of the Bernie Sanders voters. You heard him talking about that in terms of the minimum wage, and also talking about that in terms of taxes, not making the rich pay more. And he did the same thing on ABC. And then the final issue that he talked about on Meet the Press in terms of the flip-flop, Chuck Todd asked him about flip-flopping on liking Hillary Clinton, which I wanted to play because a little later you'll hear him say some pretty harsh things about Hillary Clinton over on ABC. This is the last NBC clip over here.
Another contradiction has been on your feelings toward Hillary Clinton. In 2012, as she was leaving Secretary of State, you praised her. You thought she did a good job. You even sort of said, you know what, she's not pushing her agenda. She had to carry on somebody else's agenda. Before that, you didn't fault her on the Iraq War vote because you said, you know what, she got bad intelligence like a lot of other people got. Now, you say...
I didn't get bad intelligence.
You say
I didn't get bad intelligence.
I understand that, but you said you kind of forgave her on that early on. Now you call her, she's been crooked from the start. I guess this goes back to which Donald Trump do we believe on your feelings toward Hillary Clinton, 2012 or now?
Okay. So recently a magazine said Donald Trump's a world-class businessman, and I am. I built an amazing company, some of the greatest assets in the world, and just great stuff. Mm-hmm. All over the world. I go all over the world. I'm in Europe. I'm in Asia. I'm all over the world. I'm not looking to get in fights with politicians. I'm not looking to get in fights with the Secretary of State. So when I do something in a country, wherever it may be, in Dubai, where I'm doing big jobs, and other places, in China, where I'm actually getting ready to sign big jobs through my company, let me just tell you something. I want to get along with politicians. So when somebody says, what do you think of Hillary Clinton? Number one, I'm not looking at it that closely because I'm in business. But when somebody says 3, 4, 5 years ago, let's look at Hillary Clinton, what do you think? I say she's doing great. I say everybody's doing great. The fact is, she has not done a good job. When I look at what happened with Libya, when I look at what happened with Benghazi, when you look at the migration, when you look at all of the things, but I'm not looking to criticize. You can look at many politicians that haven't done a good job. How are they doing? They're doing just fine. I'm not looking to get into wars with politicians because I need politicians.
All right, last question. Why not?
Well, I don't know. That doesn't sound very honest. As a businessman, I guess businessmen aren't supposed to be honest either. Like politicians aren't supposed to be honest, or I don't know. But that whole thing about how he didn't mean it when he said he liked Hillary, he was just saying it, and now he's really being more honest about how he feels about Hillary Clinton. And I don't think he could honestly have said he liked someone with all the negative things you're going to see him say now. In these clips here on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. I'm going to show 4 clips. The first 2 are his attacks on Hillary Clinton. First on this whole woman's card issue. The way they did the interview over on ABC's This Week is they kind of interspersed it with some narrative from George Stephanopoulos and some clips that came both from before and after the interview. That Meet the Press interview was on Saturday, and then Chuck Todd showed a quick clip of something that
is focused on in her base by playing that women's card.
He doesn't think much of equal pay for women because, of course, he doesn't think much of women, it turns out.
Trump digging in with this remarkable statement.
I mean, all of the men, we're petrified to speak to women anymore. We may raise our voice. You know what? The women get it better than we do, folks. All right? They get it better than we do.
But he's also up against the president.
Republican women, voters, are going to have to decide, is that the guy I feel comfortable with in representing me and what I care about?
Well, I'll tell you what my reaction is. I won in massive doses and by a massive number, New York, Pennsylvania, everything. I won overall, but I won with women, I won with men, I won with older, I won with soldiers, I won with highly educated and not so highly educated. I won with everybody.
So you're not worried about Obama out there campaigning against
look, you know what? Once we start, I think it's going to be good. You know, Hillary Clinton, the only thing she's got going, she plays the woman card 100%. I saw her in a speech. Well, Donald Trump spoke a little bit harshly to Megyn Kelly. Well, Megyn Kelly was really terrific. She called me and came up to my office. She wanted to make peace. And we did. We did. I mean, it was very nice. Some of the stuff is said as you know, an entertainer because I have The Apprentice, or some of it was said in fun with certain shows like Howard Stern, who was a friend of mine. And I'll tell you what.
So you're not worried about the tapes of that coming back?
It comes back. I mean, look, what am I going to do? Everyone else thinks it. You know, these politicians, I watch the politicians. What they say behind the scenes makes whatever I said jokingly to Howard and other people like baby stuff. What they tell me behind the scenes, talking about everything, is far worse than anything that you've seen or you ever will see about me. And then they act like, oh, that's so terrible, that's so terrible. I mean, you know what it's called? Give me a break. And I watch Hillary Clinton like she's a baby. I mean, just look at what happens with her family. I watch Hillary Clinton like, oh, the way he talks to women, the way he talks to women. Well, what are those, you know, take a look at her husband, and what do you think he talks to women? So when I watch her, and she's playing the woman's card so much, and so loud, and frankly, I think it's her only chance of getting elected. But you know what? Listen, she's going to get hit for it because it's not appropriate.
Yeah, there was an article.
And so that's the beginning of the woman card and the Hillary Clinton hits that Donald Trump started in his interviews, not so much on Meet the Press, but with ABC's ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos there. And then you'll see in this next question he gets a little bit worse, but it's in the clips afterwards. You'll see he goes way overboard in bringing up the Hillary Clinton association with Bill Clinton and his extramarital activities, as I will discuss after you watch that clip. Let me make sure I have the right one here. clip 15 over here.
Article in GQ about your wife, Melania, this week, and you said that spouses should be off the table, but you're willing to talk about Bill Clinton. Should he be off the table as well?
It depends if he's involved in the campaign. I think if he's involved in the campaign, he shouldn't be, and he probably will be involved. I think he gets involved when she plays the women's card. When she said Donald Trump was nasty to a woman, number one, I've worked so well with women for so many years. I broke, you talk about the glass ceiling, what I've done in terms of jobs for women, and I've gotten so much credit, and to this day I have so many women in my company that are doing so well, making so much money. I mean, in many cases making more money than men in comparable positions. But no, if he's involved in the campaign, he should absolutely, he could be brought into it.
So no, fair game.
I think fair game, yeah. No, I think fair game.
As Trump made clear Friday night.
Nobody in this country, and maybe in the history of the country politically, was worse than Bill Clinton with women. He was a disaster.
And Saturday.
Hillary Clinton's husband abused women more than any man that we know of in the history of politics, right? She's married to a man who was the worst abuser of women in the history of politics. She's married to a man who hurt many women, and Hillary, if you look and you study, Hillary hurt many women.
To Trump, the rules of the game are clear. If you're on the field, you get hit.
Now, my wife was a...
So, yeah, you can see there that Donald Trump really went after Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's extramarital activities in clips that aired after the ABC interview and after the NBC interview, is when he really somehow decided that it was time to go after Hillary Clinton and her association enabling Bill Clinton's extramarital activities. And that wasn't the only issue that George Stephanopoulos brought up that I didn't really see covered over on Meet the Press. Another important issue I thought that George Stephanopoulos brought up was foreign policy, and he asked about a contradiction between something Donald Trump said in his big foreign policy speech about how he wants to the right clip here. Let me just double check. I'm getting a little distracted by my stream problems here. Yes, clip 16 over here.
$4 trillion in the Middle East, and our country's going to hell.
Let's talk more about the Middle East. In your speech, your foreign policy speech a couple weeks ago, you said you wanted to work closely with our Muslim allies to defeat ISIS.
Sure.
But don't you push those allies away with your plan to prevent Muslims from coming to the country?
If anything, you make them stronger toward you. And I've heard that whole thing, oh, if you do the ban. Well, the ban is a temporary ban until we find out what's going on, because you see, hey, the World Trade Center, San Bernardino. We can't go through this. Look at what's happening in Europe. Look at what's happening to Germany. Look at what's happening to Sweden. They have a small section of Sweden which is beyond out of control, all right? We can't be the stupid people anymore. In fact, right here in Nebraska, they're bringing in tremendous numbers of people.
Let me put you back in the Oval Office.
We don't know who these people are. We don't know where they're coming from.
I
would stop that immediately.
You're in the Oval Office a year from now. President Trump is there. David Cameron, who's criticized proposal, comes to you. Benjamin Netanyahu comes to you. He's criticized the proposal. The leaders of Jordan and Egypt and Turkey come to you and say, we want to help you in the fight against ISIS. We can't do it if that ban is in place. What do you do?
I disagree with them. I think it's going to be even better. I think if the ban is in place, they're going to want to show that they're going to... Look, we're not getting any help. If you look at the help, we're not getting help. They keep saying boots on the ground, boots on the ground. They're not fighting. We give them equipment. They run. They drop our equipment. The enemy picks up our equipment. I have a friend whose son has spent years now, numerous terms, over in Iraq. And he's an unbelievable young guy. And I brought him in. I wanted to talk to him about it. They're very dispiritized. And he said, the equipment that the American soldiers have is not as good as what the enemy has. I said, how can that be? And they have our equipment. Because the enemy takes over the equipment that the other ones are using, our so-called allies are using, when they drop it and they run. They run for their lives. And the enemy picks up our equipment 2,000 Humvees that armor-plated, the best in the world, and we have stuff without armor plate, all right? And he said it's really sad when the enemy has our equipment and it's better and newer than the stuff they're using.
And that's like vintage Donald Trump. That's about all the Donald Trump I can stand. There's going to be one more quick Donald Trump clip in the clip after next. But you notice how he's supposedly talking about the Muslim ban there and how it's going to affect our foreign policy. And he sort of answered, and it was not a very strong answer about, oh, it's going to make us stronger. That's one of the things he said. And they're going to love me, whatever. But then he pivots to this whole thing about needing better military equipment that had nothing to do with the question. That's vintage Donald Trump. Change the subject when you don't have a good answer, which is pretty much all the time. That's why he changes the subject so much. But I'm going to change the subject just a little bit. It's still on Donald Trump and what's wrong with Donald Trump. But this is the Bill Maher clip I promised that would come before the last Donald Trump clip and the last clip in the Republican side of the 2016 presidential race, that topic. And this is Bill Maher sort of following up on a joke he made last week that I criticized him for being sexist on, where I said he was calling Donald Trump a hysterical woman and using the hysterical woman stereotype that has been used to denigrate women. And he basically did the same thing this week, but he went to great pains to explain that if it is a stereotype and it's a bad stereotype, and it goes back to when his mother was born, since it's Mother's Day, how she couldn't vote, or women couldn't vote when she was born. And then there's a clip of My Fair Lady and talking about how silly women are. I actually got rid of the audio because I was too paranoid about copyright, because on Real Time with Bill Maher in the New Rules segment, they had subtitles of the lyrics, so you can read those. They're a little bit small, but it's only a very small part of this clip, which is about 3 minutes long, and it's the same argument that Donald Trump has all the negative aspects of women. He even calls him a whiny bitch, but he's not being sexist because of the context he puts the whole thing in over in this clip.
This Sunday, which is Mother's Day, think about the fact that when my mother was born, women in America could not vote. My mother. Not some far distant relative I discovered on Ancestry.com. My mother, who was born in 1919, the year before women got the vote. Of course, by the time she had me in 1956, things for women had really changed. How much? I'll leave that to Rex Harrison to explain. He played Professor Henry Higgins when My Fair Lady opened on Broadway in 1956. Hit it, Rex. And he's the hero. But that was how women were viewed in the 1950s. Irrational, pouty, vain, thin-skinned, hysterical, and just not that bright. Does that sound like anyone we know today? Who? Oh, yeah. Him. Yes, Donald Trump, who says that if Hillary Clinton was a man, she wouldn't get 5% of the vote. And if Trump was a man, he'd stop whining like a little bitch. This is a guy who actually brags about his prowess at whining.
I am a whiner, and I'm a whiner, and I keep whining and whining until I win.
Yes, it's the I Love Lucy school of diplomacy. Does anyone fit the stereotypical 50s description of a woman better than Donald Trump? Any cringe-inducing line they ever said about a secretary on Mad Men is true about Trump. And yet, he's the one with the penis. And we know that because if you make fun of it, he'll be up all night tweeting about how great it is. He accuses Megyn Kelly of being menstrual, but for him, that time of the month is always. Has there ever been anyone more thin-skinned? I made a joke about his father being an orangutan once, and he marched into court with his birth certificate and sued me because he's a whiny little bitch, and if he's not suing you... If he's not suing you, he's threatening to sue you, or demanding an apology, or threatening to spill the beans.
So I thought that was the new rules thing was kind of funny, and some of the jokes that Bill Maher made were funny as usual. And his criticisms of Donald Trump, I think, were pretty much all accurate. The one thing I'm a little bit I don't know, skeptical of is that he continues to use that anti-woman stereotype, but it's okay because he's saying it's an anti-woman stereotype. I don't know, why can't he just like make these negative criticisms of Donald Trump without like, it's because he wants to call him a whiny bitch and use like negative female stereotypes. He wants to use those so badly that he has to put it in a context and point out that it's actually a negative female stereotype so that it's not quite as bad. But I don't know. You can let me know down in the comment section what you think about Bill Maher contextualizing the negative female stereotype I talked about last week in this new rule segment this week, and what you think about his criticisms of Donald Trump. And then I have one more quick clip of Donald Trump. It's sort of a softball question he got from George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week, because it was an interview to air on Mother's Day. He asked him about his mother, because we know more about his father, where he got a lot of his money. And it actually, I think, even though George Stephanopoulos didn't make this point, I think it may show a little bit about why there may be two sides of Donald Trump, as I will discuss after you watch that last Trump clip of tonight. Thank God, over here.
Mother's Day, I closed out our interview by asking to reflect on his late mom.
Great heart. She was a warm woman. She had a tremendous warmth and a tremendous heart. And she understood life so well. My father was sort of a very hard-driving guy, really good man, very good person, but very hard. She was just somebody that was so warm and had the greatest heart. She loved people.
This week with
So yeah, I've never really heard Donald Trump talk about his mother. Sorry for the slight delay there. I was looking at your live comments and trying to see if the stream's working. I apologize for all the stream errors for the live viewers. It looks like there may be some audio sync problem. I'm probably not going to use this archive. I'll have to upload the recorded version later. But I did want to say that I thought that that last clip there may show why there is a Democratic Donald Trump who relates to his mother, and then the Republican Donald Trump from his father. Of course, that is not a new analysis in terms of the mommy party and the daddy party, but it kind of conforms to that description of Donald Trump's own mommy there. So I thought I would at least remark on that, and maybe that's why he has an ability to pivot more towards his mom's side. That you can let me know what you think. That, or is that stereotypical gender? Or is that a gender stereotype that we should have gotten beyond, like Bill Maher was saying? Now I'm the one being sexist, right? No, but I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. That's like I said, the end of the Republican side of the 2016 presidential race with those, I think it was 18 clips, something like that. Yeah, that was, I just played clip 18. So the next 6 clips are Hillary Clinton's interview over on CBS's Face the Nation with John Dickerson. Bernie Sanders didn't do any interviews, so I can't show you any clips from him. I'm hoping tomorrow to make up for that by going to a Bernie Sanders rally here in Sacramento with my video camera and getting a full Bernie Sanders speech that I will then be able to upload sometime tomorrow night. But I can't promise that. There are all these logistical things. They just moved the time the thing starts 3 hours earlier. And anyway, I'm not promising that, but hopefully I will have a Bernie Sanders speech recorded on my own video camera here in Sacramento tomorrow night to upload. But he is even though he won Indiana, and that wasn't really covered on any of the Sunday morning news shows. Nobody even mentioned his upset win in Indiana after he was behind by 4 or 5 points in the closest poll I think they showed last week. But they did do this long interview with Hillary Clinton over on CBS's Face the Nation. The interview that aired was, I think, 11 minutes, and then they had a 14-minute extended interview, and the link you can see down in the video description to the Face the Nation website. I'm going to show about half the interview split up into these 6 clips, I think. The first question that John Dickerson asked Hillary Clinton in the interview, and this is the first one I want to play, is he seemed to be wanting to get Hillary Clinton to say, she had said that Donald Trump is a loose cannon, and John Dickerson apparently wanted to get Hillary Clinton to say that he has some kind of mental illness, which she wasn't willing to say, but she had a lot of reasons to back up her accusation of being a loose cannon over in this clip.
Clinton, you have said that Donald Trump is a loose cannon. You said he's dangerous. Are you suggesting he's not of sound mind?
Well, I think that being a loose cannon means saying that other nations should go ahead and acquire nuclear weapons for themselves when that is the last thing we need in the world today. Being a loose cannon is saying we should pull out of NATO, the strongest military alliance in the history of the world, and something that we really need to modernize but not abandon. I think saying that he's a loose cannon really focuses on some of the statements he's made, which I find concerning. Going back to torture, killing terrorist families, which would be a war crime. And those are just some of the concerns that I hear people talking about, which I think does fit the definition of a loose cannon.
But you're not making any claims about his underlying stability.
I'm talking about what he has said in this campaign and continues to say, and the kind of agenda he's putting forth for our country, which obviously I think would, not be in the best interests.
What do you take away from the...
So, I don't know. A lot of the interview by John Dickerson on CBS's Face the Nation of Hillary Clinton there, I thought was kind of a softball interview. I usually, if you look down in my clip notes, I will say that the interview questions are either a tee-up question, that's a softball question, or a versus question, that's a more confrontational question. Then I think, unless you think it's a sneaky plot to get her to say that Donald Trump is mentally imbalanced, that was a fairly softball question. And this next question is definitely a softball question, like, well, you'll see it's name 3 hard questions we should be asking Donald Trump, and she names a lot more than 3, as I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
Hard questions now that he's in the general election, essentially. Give me 3 hard questions you think he should be asked.
Well, when he says that Americans don't need a raise, and that's why he doesn't believe we should raise the minimum wage, what's that based on? Because if you look at the evidence, and more than evidence, if you listen to the stories, as I have now for more than a year, of so many Americans who haven't had a raise in 15 years. It raises serious issues about, how well he understands what's happening in the economy to working people.
So his answer would be he wants to create jobs, and those jobs will raise wages. That would be. So he's been asked that question, and he just has a different view.
Well, he doesn't have a view. He has a slogan, and he needs to be really pressed on that. When he says climate change is a Chinese hoax, what does that mean? Has he ever talked to a scientist, or is he just, again, assuming a slogan? When he said it's women should be punished for having abortions, what does that mean? And how would he go about that? Or rounding up 11, 12 million people, which he again repeated, which would entail the most comprehensive police and military action inside our borders that is imaginable. And you combine that with a lot of what he has said about foreign policy, and then recently economic policy, when he said he'd renegotiate the national debt. Maybe he just doesn't understand that running our government is not the same as making real estate deals, that putting the full faith and credit of the United States of America at risk would be a horrible outcome, and it would raise interest rates, it would wipe away savings, it would cause a financial global meltdown. People need to be pressing him, and I don't think people get, especially in the media, at least so far, into other than just the response, which then is not followed up on.
One of the things that people said.
Well, I thought that was a pretty good answer from Hillary Clinton there. Other than the fact that she didn't really give 3 questions, she gave a lot more than 3 questions, and she started referring back to her previous answer about the foreign policy stuff that she had already talked about. And I thought, like I said, I thought it was kind of a softball question from John Dickerson. And in this next question, I think it's a little bit more confrontational. I have it slightly on the confrontational side of the scale. You'll see Hillary Clinton has a pretty easy answer for this question about her negatives and Donald Trump's negatives, and if it means inevitably that the campaign's going to be ugly. And instead she talks about the positives, as you might expect, which is why it's not really that confrontational a question over in this clip.
Hard questions now that he's in the general election, essentially. What are the, give me 3, like, and we'll get to the race that you still have going in the Democratic race, but they see Donald Trump has high negatives, high unfavorable numbers. You also have high unfavorable numbers, and they think this is going to be a very ugly race. Why are they wrong?
Well, I'm not going to run an ugly race. I am going to run a race based on issues and what my agenda is for the American people. I don't really feel like I'm running against Donald Trump. I feel like I'm running for my vision of what our country can be, and to knock down all the barriers that stand in the way of Americans getting ahead. I've heard about those. I've sat across the table from, you know, so many Americans. I've been in large and small crowds. People grab my hand and talk to me about how hard it is to make ends meet. They've got 2 minimum wage jobs and they can't pay their rent, or their child has an addiction problem, or they can't afford college. I know what is really racking the hearts and minds of Americans. I'm going to stay focused on that, and I hope that that's what the voters will want to hear.
Some of your aides talk about something.
I'm going to show that next question in just a second, but even though that was a slightly confrontational question from John Dickerson, it mentioned her negatives. I think Hillary Clinton treated it like it was a softball question there, because she just, and John Dickerson let her pivot to, you know, I'm not going to go negative because I just care about the American people, even though she just went negative in some of her last answers there about him being a loose cannon. And anyway, I want to move on to the next question there that we heard John Dickerson start asking about. Some of her aides have this idea that she's going to be able to reach out to, you know, find some Hillary Democrats because of how disaffected some Hillary Republicans, because some Republicans are going to be so disaffected by the winning of the nomination by Donald Trump. And so this is another softball question, you know, how are you going to reach out to those Republicans? And she has an easy answer for that, of course, over in this clip.
Something called Republicans for Hillary. They think that with Donald Trump getting the nomination, it opens a certain kind of Republican voter to you that might not have been available before. How do you get that voter? The skeptical voter who's skeptical of Hillary Clinton, but that you might be able to get now. What's the pitch to them?
Well, obviously, I'm reaching out to Democrats, Republicans, independents, all voters who want a candidate who is running a campaign based on issues, who has been willing to put out plans and explain those plans and talk about how to pay for those plans, who has a track record of getting results for people, who understands that although we do live in a dangerous world, there's nothing we can't meet in terms of the challenges we face if we put our minds to it. And so I think that for a lot of people, again, who take their vote seriously and who really see this as a crossroads kind of election, I am asking people to come join this campaign, and I've had a lot of outreach from Republicans in the last days who say that they are interested in talking about that.
When you
So, I mean, that's what you would expect Hillary Clinton to say. I don't know if that's true or not. It was a pretty easy question. What are you going to do to outreach to Republicans? I'm sure she has standard talking points, and you just heard them there. And whether she'll be able to reach out to Republicans and independents. So far in the primaries, Bernie Sanders has done a lot better with independents and even Republicans than Hillary Clinton, but she's done a lot better with the Democratic Party, which is more important in the Democratic primaries. That's why so far she's been winning, and she's ahead in both the pledged and the unpledged delegates. And that still doesn't really justify the lack of almost any mention of Bernie Sanders and his win in Indiana on any of the Sunday shows. One of the only mentions of Bernie Sanders in the interview with Hillary Clinton is in this next question, where you'll see John Dickerson ask Hillary Clinton about how she treated Barack Obama when she ended up losing in 2008, and if that's to imply how Bernie Sanders is supposed to act, and you'll see Hillary Clinton answering that question in clip number 23 over here.
Bernie Sanders, when you've talked recently, you said in 2008 you could have kept going, but you knew Barack Obama was going to win, and so you kind of got out of the way. It sounded very much like you were trying to lead Senator Sanders to the exit. Is that what you were trying to do?
Well, I was talking about my experience, because I do think it's a useful reminder that I was much closer to then Senator Obama. We were neck and neck in the popular vote. His lead over me in the pledged delegate numbers was much, much smaller. As I say, I'm 3 million votes ahead of Senator Sanders, nearly 300 pledged delegates ahead of him. He has to make his own mind up, but I was very heartened to hear him say last week that he's going to work 7 days a week to make sure Donald Trump does not become president. And I want to unify the party. I see a great role and opportunity for him and his supporters to be part of that unified party, to move into not just November to win the election against Donald Trump, but to then govern based on the progressive goals that he and I share. We both want to raise the minimum wage. We both understand you've got to rein in bad actors on Wall Street and in corporate America to make sure they don't wreck Main Street. We have a lot of the same goals, and I hope we can unify around them.
Let me ask you about development.
So, like I said, I that was the only mention of Bernie Sanders, and the only question was, you know, basically, are you implying he should drop out? And she gave the answer similar to what you've probably heard if you've been watching her interviews on my clip roundups for the last few weeks, where she's done one interview a week, and this was her one interview a week where I think she basically said what she wants to say to the Bernie Sanders supporters. And you can let me know what you think about it down in the comment section, especially for my live viewers, who I notice are starting to come back after the stream problems seem to have been resolved. And I'm going to finish up one more clip of Hillary Clinton before I get to 4 clips on the Libertarian candidate for president, which is kind of a surprise this week. But first I want to get to this last clip where John Dickerson, this is, if anything, is a confrontational question, or sort of a sneaky question, kind of like the loose cannon question was sort of a sneaky way to try to get her, try to get Hillary Clinton to talk about how she thinks Donald Trump might be crazy. This is kind of a clip that I showed a couple different ways in the last couple weeks, where both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have been asked about how they're on the wrong side politically of each other on foreign policy, that in some ways Hillary Clinton is to the right of Donald Trump on, you know, being activist and interventionist in foreign policies. In other ways, Donald Trump's way to the right, you know, the Muslim ban, and you know, we have to be really the biggest, bestest military in the world, and we have to be the strongest, and we have to, well, but it's like blustery talk. But then when you get down to the specifics, in some ways he wants to be less interventionist than Hillary Clinton, and he makes up the story about how he was against the Iraq War from the start, even though it doesn't really match up with some of his statements, and that's a way to get to the left of Hillary Clinton on foreign policy. Well, in this last question, John Dickerson seems to be trying to get Hillary Clinton to kind of admit that she's to the right of Donald Trump on foreign policy. At least that's my interpretation, and you can let me know what you think after you watch that final clip from the Hillary Clinton interview, at least the final clip I'm going to show over here.
A piece in the Washington Post, speaking of foreign policy, where he suggests that Donald Trump is pulling away from U.S. commitments abroad. Is part of this campaign going to be you making the case for why the United States has to have a very active role overseas?
Well, I will certainly stand up for what I think American values, interests, and our security require. I don't see Donald Trump having any kind of coherent foreign policy or theory of national security. He kind of makes statements that I find concerning, whether it's about nuclear weapons or torture or anything else. So I think the burden is really on him to try to make a case why, when you've had 70 years of American policy under both Republicans and Democrats trying to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons, he is so cavalier, even reckless and dangerous about how he talks when it comes to nuclear weapons.
Secretary Clinton, thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
So I don't think Hillary Clinton really took the bait there on moving to the right of Donald Trump on foreign policy. She wanted to move more toward, she's always trying to move to the center, I guess, and she's trying to make it instead of being a right-left issue, being like a reasonable versus loose cannon issue, I guess, kind of like the first clip I showed of the Hillary Clinton interview. If you want to see the whole interview and even the extended interview that they didn't air on CBS broadcast network, there's a link down in the video description to the CBS Face the Nation YouTube page, where pretty much the whole broadcast is split up into a bunch of different videos, including like the last 2/3 of the broadcast is all in one video at the end there. That's the last clip I'm going to show on the Democratic side of the race. That's the two sides you would think normally, but this week on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, so they actually had on the Libertarian candidate, or the leader for the nomination in the Libertarian Party. I saw someone in the comment section before I began doing my live stream asking about the Green Party, and I think I may have covered that way back several months ago. Jill Stein is apparently going to be the nominee of the Green Party. Well, former New Mexico Republican Governor Gary Johnson looks like he's going to be the Libertarian candidate, and I think maybe the reason they put the Libertarian candidate on and not the Green Party candidate is because, as you'll see in this introduction, apparently the Libertarian Party is going to be the only third party that is on the ballot in all 50 states. And before I get to a few clips of Gary Johnson's actual interview with George Stephanopoulos, I wanted to show this introduction from ABC kind of explaining the Libertarian Party and why they may have an opportunity or a threat, or what is it, a crisis-tunity? If you watch The Simpsons, that's the Chinese word for crisis is also the word for opportunity, crisis-tunity, for the Libertarian Party, described by ABC and the host George Stephanopoulos over here.
Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, which means that former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson and his Libertarian Party are gearing up for a big year. The party, founded in 1971, may now be having its moment. Libertarians meet May 27th in Orlando, 800 delegates in all, and they are getting a lot of mainstream attention.
The Libertarian Party continues to represent those constitutional principles that I agree with.
The party lines up with conservatives on fiscal issues, social issues not so much. Libertarians are all about freedom of choice. Drugs, abortion, who you sleep with, nobody's business but your own. But maybe that will attract disaffected Democrats. Ideology aside, there are a lot of prominent conservatives and potential candidates talking about a third way.
Can't we do better? And I think we can, and I hope as a serious independent candidate steps forth, and I think that candidate could really surprise. I think that candidate could do well.
If you got to a place where those are the two major party nominees, and I certainly hope that they're not, I'd have to look for a third party option.
Against that backdrop, the Libertarian Party may prove a tempting target. After all, it's on the ballot in more than 30 states, hoping to hit 50 by Election Day. And Gary Johnson.
So that was the introduction to the Libertarian Party provided by ABC's This Week. And here's the crisis-tunity part that I promised. It's not really crisis or opportunity, it's threat or opportunity. That's the question George Stephanopoulos begins asking former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson in this next clip. And one of the reasons I wanted to show that previous clip is you'll see Gary Johnson actually refers to the previous clip in his answer, so that's why it's important for the context, where he says that he thinks ABC actually gave the Libertarian Party the right description to the American people, that it's fiscally conservative but socially liberal. That's how, and I don't know, I know I have several regular viewers who are libertarians. You can let me know if you think that that description was correct, and Gary Johnson embracing it is correct over in this clip.
Johnson joins us now. Governor Johnson, thank you for joining us this morning. You know, so many conservatives now talking about a third party. I wonder, do you see that as a threat or an opportunity to the libertarians? And have you talked to them about joining forces?
Well, I think it is a real opportunity. I do think that Clinton and Trump are the two most polarizing figures in politics today. And when 50% of Americans now declare themselves as independent, I happen to think that they're libertarian. It's just that they don't know it. And you teed it up just right. Look, fiscally responsible, fiscally conservative, small government, and then individual choices, freedom, liberty. A person should be making choices in their own lives, not the government.
So what's your
as long as those choices don't put other people in harm's way.
So what is your direct...
So that's Gary Johnson embracing the way that ABC described libertarianism, and I think it's a pretty good shorthand description. And then in this next clip, you'll see Gary Johnson also addresses something that I see people ask about a lot over the years in my Sunday Clip Roundup comment sections about third parties and why they're not successful. And I've talked about the way the Electoral College disfavors third parties. But in this next clip, Gary Johnson first says that he doesn't think libertarians will take more votes from Republicans than Democrats. But then he talks about the way the polling system and the debate system is rigged against third parties, and specifically his third-party candidacy if he wins the Libertarian nomination over in... Let me make sure I have the right clip here. Yeah, over in this clip.
It seems like you're going to take more votes from Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton. Do you agree with that?
Well, no, absolutely not. And in this Monmouth poll, and key for me, George, is just continuing to be in these polls. But in the Monmouth poll, where I was at 11%, actually in that poll, I took more votes away from Hillary than Trump. But I think it really is, it draws from both sides. And at the end of the day, 50% of Americans say they're independent. Well, where's their representation? I think it happens to be libertarian. We'll see.
In the past, I guess you got about 1 million votes last time around. Don't you need a lot more reach, a lot more money in order to increase those numbers?
Right. It's a real chicken and egg thing. If you're not in the polls, of course, you don't get the attention. And come the fall, really at the heart of why this system is so rigged is the Presidential Debate Commission. They say that you have to be at 15% in the polls to be in the presidential debates. And by the way...
Ross Perot got there.
Well... Actually, that's when the League of Women Voters backed out, saying that the whole thing is a rigged game, and that's when the Presidential Debate Commission moved in. But that said, you got to be in the polls for starters, and he was in the polls. Come the fall, it wouldn't be surprising to me to say, well, Gary Johnson, he wasn't polling well at all. Well, the fact will be that I wasn't in the polls. Right now, there's a legitimacy to having me in the polls, and that is that the Libertarian Party is going to be on the ballot in all 50 states. If I'm the Libertarian nominee, I hope to be, I'm going to be the only third party on the ballot in all 50 states.
So I actually would like to see the Libertarian candidate included in the debates, especially if he continues to be at like the 10 or 11% level or 15% or, you know, I think... even at 5%, it would be interesting to see at least different debates, maybe one with the Libertarian or two with the Libertarian, and then a couple without the Libertarian if, you know, if it's going to be Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders on the off chance that happens. It would still be interesting to see the Libertarian candidate included in there, and I definitely agree that the standards are set to keep out this third voice, and the Libertarian can I don't know, I didn't have time to fact check the whole 50 state thing that he was saying that he's the only candidate who's going to be on all 50 state ballots. I don't know if that's also true of the Green Party. I thought the Green Party was on all 50 state ballots, or at least close, so you can let me know if that's true down in the comment section. Maybe I'll have time to research it after the broadcast. But I want to, before I left the Gary Johnson interview and the Libertarian Party, I had to show his answer on the one issue that I know many of my viewers find most appealing about the Libertarian Party, that it was early on marijuana legalization, and Gary Johnson talks about his long association with drug legalization in the final clip from the ABC This Week interview with the most likely candidate of the Libertarian Party for president this year, over in this clip.
You've been strongly for legalization of marijuana. In fact, you were the CEO of a company that produced marijuana products. You're very open about the fact that you use them as well. I guess you're going to have to give that up if you win the White House.
You know, I've said I'm going to do that. I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 29 years, and legalizing marijuana for me, bottom line, is making the world a better place. Medicinal products that don't kill anyone, where statistically legal prescription painkillers, antidepressants kill 100,000 people. And I've always maintained that legalizing marijuana recreationally will lead to less overall substance abuse, because people are going to find it as such a safer alternative than everything else that's out there, starting with alcohol. In Colorado, the campaign to legalize marijuana was a campaign based on marijuana is safer than alcohol. And then lastly, George, the war on drugs. Huge human toll. There are tens of millions of Americans who are convicted felons in this country that, but for our drug laws, would otherwise be tax-paying, law-abiding citizens.
Finally, bottom line, if
So I thought you would enjoy that pro-marijuana legalization argument from Gary Johnson, and that is one of the things that the Libertarian Party has to recommend it. I don't think it is ever, or it is going to be an effective competitor in the 2016 presidential election, but so many things have been strange about this election. I suppose stranger things have happened, and I was certainly wrong about Donald Trump's chances, so maybe I'm wrong about Gary Johnson's. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And before I finish the Sunday live clip roundup for this week, I wanted to revisit an issue that I also made an excerpt video, or actually it included some updated news from the Rachel Maddow show from this last week about the so-called, so this is the final topic of the broadcast. It's on North Carolina's transgender bathroom law, you may have heard discussed, that has caused a lot of businesses to boycott North Carolina. PayPal and I think it was it the NBA or I can't remember, some sports league was going to not have some big game there. But the thing that was wrong with the way Pat McCrory dealt with this issue 3 weeks ago on my Sunday clip roundup, when he was talking to Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press, is neither his answers or, frankly, Chuck Todd's questions mentioned the fact that discriminating against people based on gender in, businesses and in public facilities, that violates the Civil Rights Act having to do with sex discrimination. And that's something I pointed out 3 weeks ago. And now this last week, it's come out that the Justice Department is given a deadline to North Carolina to say they're not going to enforce the law, or they're basically going to be sued under Title IX and Title VII. I think I can't remember which one they're. Title IX has to do with the government, like academic facilities, the universities, and Title VII has to do with businesses discriminating on the basis of gender and, whether you can use the right bathrooms. And I thought that 3 weeks ago, Chuck Todd on Meet the Press did not do a very good job of cross-examining North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory on this issue. And Chris Wallace did a good job cross-examining him, but not on this issue of the Obama administration's Justice Department coming after them for sex discrimination. And I will discuss that a little more after you watch First, this 4-minute clip from Chris Wallace that doesn't really give much context and lets Governor Pat McCrory give a lot of misinformation. I will try to correct after you watch that clip here.
This order, this letter by the Justice Department is saying that every company in the United States of America that has over 15 employees are going to have to abide by the federal government's regulation on bathrooms. So now the federal government is going to tell almost every private sector company in the United States who can and who cannot come into their bathrooms, their restrooms, their shower facilities for their employees. And they're also telling every university in the United States of America. This is not just North Carolina. They are now telling every university that accepts federal funding that boys who may think they're a girl can go into a girl's locker room or restroom or shower facility. And that begins, I assume, tomorrow.
Governor, you call this a case of Washington overreach, and I want to explore that with you. Would it be overreach for the Justice Department to send you a letter like this to say you cannot have bathrooms in the state capitol, one for white and one for black?
I don't think there's any correlation between the two, and I think it's
would you
misleading.
agree that that is within the federal government's purview?
Absolutely, but we can definitely define the race of people. It's very hard to define transgender or gender identity.
But the point is, the reason I ask is that the Justice Department says that just like whites and blacks, that transgender people are a protected class.
Right, and
that has a legal meaning, a protected class under the 1964 Civil Rights Law.
That's what they say, but that's not what the federal law says. The federal law uses the term sex. And Congress does not define sex as including gender identity or other terms that the Justice Department is currently used. So right now the Justice Department is making law for the federal government as opposed to enforcing
law. It sounds like basically
law.
You're going to challenge this in court.
We're looking at all our options right now, but we also want to get feedback from the business community throughout the nation that's going to be impacted by this, and all universities throughout the nation that are impacted by this. But we're literally talking about billions of dollars. Now, if it is challenged, I assume there's no way, I'm not going to risk any money for the state of North Carolina. And now even the DOT, the National,
Department of
Transportation here in Washington is doing press releases saying they're examining whether they can take away North Carolina's money for roads and other transportation needs.
But
I'm
going to get to the money issue in a second, but how many cases have you had in North Carolina in the last year where people have been convicted of using transgender protections to commit crimes in bathrooms?
This wasn't a problem. That's the point I'm making. This is the Democratic Party and the left wing of the Democratic Party.
But have there been any cases of this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Have there been any cases in the last 5 years?
Why did the Democratic Party in Houston, Texas...
But I guess the question is, forgive me if I may, sir, why not just then let it go? If there's not a case of transgender people going in and molesting little girls.
I haven't used that at all. This is an issue of expectation.
Well, you did say a boy who thinks he's a girl going into a girl's bathroom.
And that's where there's an expectation of privacy. When you go into a restroom or your wife goes into a restroom, you assume the only other people going to that restroom or shower facility is going to be a person of the same gender. That's been an expectation of privacy that all of us have had for years.
But if there's no problem, then why pass the law in the first place?
There can be a problem because the liberal Democrats are the ones pushing for bathroom laws, and now President Obama and one of my successors as mayor, Charlotte, wants government to have bathroom rules. I'm not interested in that. We did not start this on the right. Who started it was the political left in Houston, Texas, then Charlotte, North Carolina, and now, frankly, in Washington, D.C.
Let's talk about the...
So one of the things I did think that Chris Wallace did a pretty good job of cross-examining North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory on a couple things there, especially on this thing that this idea that it's federal government overreach to come up with rules for our bathrooms, but there used to be white and black bathrooms, and that problem was actually solved by the same law that they're using now to protect transgender people's right to use the bathroom that matches their gender identity. But one thing he let, well, there are a couple things that Chris Wallace could have brought up that he didn't bring up. And I put links down in the video description to sources for both of them. One is an ACLU post about this Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion that backs up the Obama administration interpretation of the Civil Rights Act, that sex discrimination includes discrimination based on gender identity. So it's not just the Obama administration, it's a federal court of appeals that has upheld this in the case of a bathroom, a high school student that wanted to use a bathroom, and the ACLU sued on his behalf, and it upheld this same interpretation from the Department of Education. And it's not new. It doesn't start tomorrow on Tuesday, as the North Carolina governor said there. It actually goes back to April 2014, which I know, and the reason I predicted this 3 weeks ago that this was going to happen is because I actually took a seminar in July 2014 from this gender spectrum organization, where I actually learned a lot about the developing understanding of people who have different gender identities and gender expression, and it really opened my eyes, enlightened me in a lot of ways, because it's not something I, as such a cis, straight, white male, whatever, I don't have that much contact with people whose gender identity is more fluid or different. I've had a little contact over the years, but it definitely gave me a lot more insight into that perspective on life. And there were also several seminars I took being a lawyer that filled me in on the legal background and how the law was being interpreted. And I even have some of my handwritten notes. I took a screen capture here for that from July 25th, 2014. You may not be able to read this. The OCR in the margin there, that's the Office of Civil Rights. That's part of the Department of Education. And partway down there you can see OCR T9, that's Title IX claims, that's in April 2014, OCR statement on Title IX applies to gender. So way back in 2014, according to my notes, April 2014, according to my notes, the Office of Civil Rights said that sex discrimination is gender discrimination, and that's what they told me in the seminar. I never went to check it till this week, when I just to double check, I found something put out by the Department of Education Office of Civil Rights from April 2014. I put a link to the full document down in the video description. You can see Title IX sex discrimination prohibition extends to claims of discrimination based on gender identity. So it's true. It does go all the way back to April 2014 based on a document straight from the federal government that's still available online. So I just wanted to point that out. That's why 3 weeks ago I predicted that North Carolina was going to be sued by Obama's Justice Department over this Civil Rights Act violation of their stupid transgender bathroom law. And it was based on what I learned back in July of 2014 in the seminar. And before I finish up this topic, I just want to show a little more of Chris Wallace's cross-examination of Pat McCrory. This is Chris Wallace seemed much more important in the economic impacts than the impact on the poor people in the bathroom, who can't use a bathroom because of their gender identity. And I will discuss that just a little more after you watch this final clip of the broadcast over here.
Money because North Carolina's Attorney General, Roy Cooper, who coincidentally is running against you for governor in your re-election fight this year, says you made a big mistake signing this law. Here he is.
Not only is this new law a national embarrassment, it will set North Carolina's economy back if we don't repeal it.
Now, you're campaigning against Cooper for re-election in large part on what you call the Carolina comeback, which is the fact that there has been dramatic economic growth in Carolina for over the last few years. But let's take a look at the fallout from this law. PayPal canceled a 400-job operations center. This is since the law was passed and you signed it in March. Deutsche Bank shelved plans for facilities that would have employed 250 people. One study found the law has cost North Carolina $77 million and 1,750 jobs. Governor, you say you're not going to risk money All this has happened just since March.
Well, let me first say North Carolina's had the greatest economic recovery in the United States of America, more than any other state.
But this isn't good.
But since I've been governor, let me finish the sentence, Chris. And then second, I need to say PayPal, for example, is kind of selective hypocrisy and selective outrage. This is the same PayPal company that did business in Sudan, did business in Iran, does business in Saudi Arabia, and they're lecturing North Carolina because the majority of North Carolinians, I believe, think a man who's a man ought to use the restroom that is on the door. And same thing applies to women. And this is especially true in our schools, in our junior highs and our high schools. This is a basic change of norms that we've used for decades throughout the United States of America. And the Obama administration is now trying to change that norm, again, not just in North Carolina, but they're ordering this to every company in the United States of America starting tomorrow, I assume, or Tuesday, and also making this an order for every university in the United States of America.
Governor McCrory, thank you. Thanks for flying here today.
So you can see he ended with that same misinformation there about how this is some new position from the Obama administration that's going to start apparently tomorrow or Tuesday, even though it goes all the way back to April 2014. And anyway, that's the last clip I want to show you tonight. I hope you enjoyed the clips I picked out for you and my commentary on those clips. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who are asking about Sandy down in the comment section, I did take a picture of Sandy, who looked like she might be apologizing for all the stream problems, even though I don't think she had anything to do with them. So I posted that on my Instagram, LiberalViewer on Instagram, or Facebook.com/LiberalViewer, or Twitter.com/LiberalViewer. On any of those sources, you can find my picture of Sandy, who came in and was lying down there during like the last 45 minutes of the show. The last hour of the show went fine. The first hour, I apologize for all the stream errors, and I will try to upload a clean version for those of you who watch the recorded show. And like I said, if I can get my camera into this Bernie Sanders rally tomorrow. I saw someone on Twitter saying I might not be able to get my camera in, and I can get there on time and deal with all the logistics, then I would like to record Bernie Sanders' speech and upload it for all of you to watch tomorrow. I can't guarantee that. I was able also this last week to make 3 different shorter edited produced videos of various kinds, and maybe I'll be able to do that this week. Some weeks it seems to happen, other weeks not. If you want to help support me in my continuing quest to bring you video clips and commentary every Sunday and these other videos, you can give me a direct fan funding support by clicking in this corner if you live in one of the special countries where YouTube allows you to participate in fan funding, or down in the video description I put a link to my Patreon page. I appreciate my 60 or so patrons who are pledging me currently a little over $400 a month, I think. I really would like to get it up to $600 a month so that I make closer to the $15 minimum wage on my 4 shows that I do every month that take me about 10 or 12 hours per show to put together, including the broadcast here. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. I think I'm going to finish up for the week, and we'll see if Bernie Sanders gives a good speech here in California, if he can somehow pull off a Bernie Sanders miracle. Otherwise, it's going to be Trump versus Hillary, and I think this week's show gave you kind of a preview of what Trump versus Hillary is going to look like. You can let me know if you like the way Trump versus Hillary looks, or if you like maybe the Libertarian third choice or some other choice, or what you think should happen. But I will be reading your comments during the week, and until next week or my next video upload, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.